price becomes secondary to building value, because your system is going to teach them how to deliver value in the house. Because you could go out there and lowball everybody else and be busy, but you're never going to make any money.
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and Brian Kavalsian is back with us here this week. And if you missed it last week, we really rocked on this subject about attracting your ideal clients. If you don't know who you're talking to or need to talk to, who has the ability to say yes to you and your services, and you're just kind of broadcasting to everybody and going out to every lead, then you're missing a massive opportunity to streamline that and make a ton more money in a lot less time. So we're going to jump in this week. We're going to shift gears and get into the mechanics of profit, mastering P&Ls, job costing, margins for contractors. And our main objective with this episode is to teach you why, or at least introduce you why ignoring your financial statements and having a financial, ability to read financial documents could be costing you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Those documents, they tell us something. It's like a dashboard to our business. And if we're not looking at the dashboard, we don't know when we're out of gas or when the engine's overheating or how fast we're going. We don't know any of those things. We can't just spray and pray and, be high on hopium all the time that the next project's going to solve all our problems. It doesn't work that way. Also, how to work less and make more. That's everybody's goal, right? And how to master reading those financial statements. And this might sound like a yawn, but I tell you, knowing Brian, this is not going to be a yawn. You guys are going to get a lot of gold nuggets. So Brian, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Hopium. I'd never heard that before. Hopium. That's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. It's what most of us, and again, I'll raise my hand. It's always, when it comes to financial statements, when I first started out almost 30 years ago, it was like financial statements were fun to look at when you were doing well.
Right? Yeah.
You're like, all right, we just closed another project. Yeah, it's looking awesome. So much better than last year. And then all of a sudden it's the next year and things are going slow. And the last thing I want to do is open up that P&L and look at it and be like, oh no, it's negative. Like it's never going to be better. Oh my goodness, this is over. I can't believe this. This whole idea of owning a business, this imposter syndrome comes out. Like maybe I didn't know what I was doing and I just got lucky back then. But what I've learned along the way, and that's why I'm excited to have this conversation with you, is once we started to demystify these documents, these financial documents, once I started to understand what story they were telling, they were powerful. Because now they can help direct the ship. I knew what to do with it. If I saw this, I knew to do that. If I saw that, I knew to do the other thing, right? But without that clarity, without the education, without asking those questions and hiding at times when I started out, I wouldn't have that awareness. And I want to share that with the listeners on what they can do. And I know this is like your bread and butter right here. So I can't wait for you to crack into it and let us know why most people ignore their financials.
At the end of the day, it's nobody taught us how to make money in this business. That's ultimately kind of like what it comes down to. And we're out there as entrepreneurs. We talked about this in an earlier episode where we are out there, we're driven. We didn't want to go work for somebody else. We thought that, hey, I'm going to take control of my future and I'm going to go become a business owner. And, along the way, the business, and it has a dangerous tendency of doing this, it will consume your life if you allow it to. And we get so busy as entrepreneurs and we get so focused on the things that we think that matter that we will oftentimes skip over the things that really do matter.
Uh-huh.
It's the difference between, like busy work and accomplishment. I call this like busy work the illusion of accomplishment. Is I did all of these things at the end of the day I go home and I'm exhausted. I went and I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. Yeah, but did you accomplish anything? When it comes to the financial statements, I mean, it is the ultimate scorecard. And unfortunately, what a lot of business owners do, because again, Nobody, it's not your fault. Nobody taught you how to make money in this business. However, it is your fault, back to personal responsibility. If you want to build a great business, boy, you better understand your numbers inside and out, upside down and sideways. You got to understand the numbers, what those numbers are telling you, and what you need to do, the decisions you need to make based on what the numbers are telling you. And so, people have metrics for sales and for marketing and for production, like for sales. Just as an example, what do you teach your people? What are the metrics you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the first metric is closing rate. If you're seeing 10 clients, how many of those are becoming customers? And then if you have different layers, like, first money might be design and second money might be build. So
Mhm.
how many are going from first money to second money? That's the question, right? So we're tracking those. And if we see that our closing rate on design is really, really high, but our build rate is really low, there's a problem. There's a bottleneck right there. So that's where we have to, but if we have 100% closing rate on design and 90% closing rate on build, we're doing pretty good. But if it's 100% on one and 2% on the other, or 10%, we got to fix the problem. So those are like blinking red lights or green lights, depending on how it is. So that's like the primary ones that I'm targeting on the front side.
So you and a lot of other, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of people have these metrics in place for
Mhm.
sales.
Yep.
So like in our niche, roofing, windows, siding, one day bath, anything kind of quick turn that is not design build. So you got a salesperson, we're issuing that salesperson 2 leads a day, no
Uh,
more, two a day, two. Okay. So up to 10 a week. So we're looking at, okay, if I gave you 10, how much money did you bring me back? Let's say, to make the math easy, let's say you brought me back $30,000. You made 3 sales at 10 each. You brought me 30,000. Now we track a number called NSLI. We track close rate. We do all of these things. And then what happens? Salesperson comes in at a 15% close rate and a $1,200 NSLI. Are we going to keep giving him leads?
mm-mm.
No. So we do it with sales, with marketing. What do we look at? We look for uh, cost per lead. We look at cost per issued lead. We look at cost per customer acquisition. Look at all kinds of different variables. Okay, what percentage of of my revenue did this cost me? On and on and on. Well, why don't we do that with our P&L? Why don't we have the same sort of system set up with our P&L? You want to hear something? This is not going to shock you, but it may shock a lot of people listening. So we do every year, for the last 4 years, we've done this profit workshop. Hundreds of contractor companies have come through this thing. And we survey everybody before the workshop. And we ask them, how many of you, three answers. Um, how many of you get a P&L by the 15th of each month? 1/3 don't get a P&L by the 15th of the month. Another third sometimes get a P&L. And then the last bucket is 1/3 actually get a P&L. All right. So 2/3 of people in business that say they want to make a lot of money, that they want free time, don't get a P&L. P&L is the ultimate scorecard. The P&L tells you exactly what's going on in your business because you're there to make a profit. Make no mistake. You are there to maximize value to your shareholders, to your stakeholders. And in most cases, who's that? That's your spouse or partner and your children. Okay. And so you are not doing a good job if you are not looking at these financials. Because at the end of the day, what needs to happen is, okay, we did this revenue. And when we go all the way to the bottom, this much was left over. I think 10% break even, 15 to 20% is ideal. So if you do 2 million in revenue, your profit should be somewhere between 300 and 400,000. This is after everything and everyone is paid, including you, for the job that you do in the business. So if you're the GM of the business, what would it cost you to replace that position? What does that cost in your market? Say it's 100 grand. Okay. Well, you should be paying yourself a salary of 100 grand. And then that 100 grand should be on your P&L as an expense, not, at the bottom. And you say, well, yeah, my salary is included in the profit. And you think you're making more money than you are. So we have to understand what those numbers are telling us. And we got to make sure that the P&L, let's say, is structured in a way where you get that information quickly and easily for you to read it. And so we can go over some of what that might look like if you want.
I'd love to, yeah. And I know the listeners are probably listening like, yeah, I've heard this before. I've
Yeah.
heard, they always talk out to this big, long document with lots of numbers on it. I understand expenses and income. Like, I get that part. But is there anything that we could be looking at in that document, the profit and loss, that is like if you take this and divide it by that, it gives you this, or something that is like a blinking light, either good or bad, that could help us as we're going along, like a
Well,
percentage or something?
yeah. So let's look at the way that we teach it and the way that we do it I didn't want to do this. Neither did my partner. But we actually, because we got so frustrated with the lack of bookkeepers and accountants in our field that understand our business, that understand accrual accounting, that understand how to use the balance sheet and the P&L, that don't do checkbook accounting, that don't do cash accounting. And I know all of this sounds complicated. It's not. Believe me, it's not complicated. So my partner and I, we started, essentially, we took his system that he's used for 4 decades to have above average profits in his business year after year after year, regardless of what was happening with the economy, regardless of what was happening in the marketplace. None of that mattered. This was his profit number, and he was going to hit that number year after year after year. So we take that system and we install it in other companies now. So the way that we look at it is we say, okay, you have 7 buckets where everything lives. Okay. Bucket 1, materials, labor, commissions. Okay. It's 3 buckets, but those are your first 3. After that, you take those numbers, you take that away from your revenue, what you installed and collected, not what's sitting in the bank, not your customer deposits, what was actually completed. Okay. Then you get a gross margin number. Most important number is that number, gross margin.
Mm.
The next bucket is marketing. And then you have 3 overhead buckets that we track. Okay. Simple. 7 buckets. And then we use QuickBooks Online. Very simple. To run a P&L, all you do is you go in and you say, okay, give me October or give me November, and then give me percentage of income next to it. So now I can look at each of the buckets, and I know I like your red light, green light. Is it red light or is it green light? We call it on track or off track using EOS language. Is your gross margin what it needs to be? Now, we define that early. So when we first start with a client, and by the way, you can kind of do this on your own, you have 100%. If you want to make 15% net profit, you can only spend 85%.
Pretty simple.
How does it break up within the 7 buckets?
Yeah.
How do you break that up? So we do that first. So we talk through and we say, okay, where are you right now? We're at 6%. We want to be at 15%. All right. Well, we got to get 9 points from somewhere. Where are we going to go get it from? And we create a model. Now, it doesn't mean we can do it immediately. Sometimes it takes a year, or sometimes it'll take 2 years. But at least now we've got a model that we run. So we create what we call a profit blueprint. Here is what your ideal looks like. Okay. 15% net, or 18 or 20 or whatever the number is. Here's what it looks like. What does your gross margin need to be in order for you to hit that number? Now, gross margin, okay, is what we use to pay for marketing and overhead. It's everything that's not a direct cost against the job.
Mhm.
And so once we understand that, now we can then plan out what this all what our year is kind of going to look like. So if we want to, let's say we want to make $500,000 on a 15% net, that's you got to do 3.3 million in revenue. Okay. So in order for us to do 3.3 million in revenue, we take your average job, whatever let's say in your case it's 100 grand.
Sure.
So now we need to do 33, 34 jobs. Okay. Done completed jobs, all revenue in. And so now we go through and we say, okay, what was our material labor? What's our allowable material labor and commissions on that? And that's going to give us our gross margin. Gross margin is also dictates your pricing strategy. So a lot of people are pricing. I was telling you about the client that I have that's in the outdoor living business in Southern California. She Before she got a hold of me and got into our groups, she's like pulling her hair out because she's doing these big, amazing, beautiful jobs. And yet she's in debt and doesn't have any money.
Huh.
So I'm like, okay, we got to break down these jobs and understand what is going on with each job.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And so she showed me this job. She said, Brian, I just sold this $750,000 job. This is like a week or two before she got into our groups. And I said, okay, let's go through that job. Okay, how long is that job going to take you? I forgot what she said. 6 months, let's say. Okay, how many working days is that? 120. All right. It's 750,000. Divide that by 120 working days. That's X number of dollars per day. What's your gross margin? What's your gross margin? Well, I think it was like 20%. Okay. So your profit per day in that situation is $1,200. That $1,200 needs to cover all of your overheads and needs to provide you a salary and profit. Once I showed her that, she's like, "Oh shit, no wonder we're not making any money." You
Yep.
think?
Yep.
So you're bringing in 20 grand a month on this one job. You're bringing 20 grand a month up after your in gross margin, let's say, after material and labor and commissions. You're bringing in 20 grand a month, and yet your monthly overhead is 35,000 a month or 45,000 a month. Now what are you going to do? Well, now you got to either go hustle and go sell more jobs, or you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're running out of cash. Now you got to go into debt. So what did she do? She went into debt. She said, "Hey, I got this job. It's going to bring in X number of dollars per week. And oh, by the way, you know what people will loan you money on? I forgot what it's called, but they will swipe X number of dollars out of your account every single week to pay the debt." I forgot what it's called. They told me what it's called, but it's
Huh.
like, so I took a loan for $200,000 because I'm not making enough money to cover my monthly net, but I'm okay because the weekly payment's $5,000 or
Huh.
$3,000, whatever it is. I'm like, people are doing this shit because
Huh.
they're not charging enough and they're not walking away from jobs that they shouldn't do in the first place. Like, okay, it sounds great to sell a $750,000. Sounds amazing. And by the way, the end product is going to be amazing. She didn't make any money. So why
Yeah.
the hell do it? Why go through the exercise of doing it? So last time we talked about the guy that's doing 20 million with a 5% net, making $1 million a year. Well, my thinking on that, let's just say I'm trying